Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Namo Vishnupadaya Vishnuprishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschyatadesa Tarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're in chapter 28. Thank you so much for letting me know. I need to move. Yeah, then how did we come to 27? I don't know. Oh, we used the old, I used a different laptop. That's right. Yesterday. Okay. Any reflections, memories, what we did yesterday? What we read yesterday?
They met basically a Bengali youth while they ride back from train ride from Delhi to Calcutta, and they were karma yogis.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were karma yogis and they were
arguing in the train.
Arguing with Prabhupada, but they still had some respect because he was a sannyasi, but they were kind of in an argument mode.
Basically, train journey, description of train journey, and Prabhupada's. What is Prabhupada's sister's name? Test for everybody. AJ, are you going to pass the test? Who is
Inama or something?
I'm just going to pass.
Bhavat. Pisima. Vasudev saying Pisima. Yeah, right. Pisima, yeah. Pisima is like aunt is Pisima, but her name is not Pisima. But good job. Pisima is Pisima means brother sister. You call Pisima. Is aunt, but Bhavatarini, right?
Yes. Bhavatarini.
Tarini, yeah. Okay. Anything else we read?
They had gone to the right. I think it was this chapter, right? They had gone to the Bam Maharaj's Institute. Was that in this chapter?
That was in previous one, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah. Or I can't remember if it was 26 or 27, but yeah. And we're unimpressed with it. That's
fine. That's fine. You can share from. We did read yesterday, right? Bon Maharaj. What happened? I also joined half right yesterday. I'm missing some of the things. I want to see where did we leave? Do you all remember? Prabhupada recovered and began. This is the one, right? I think we will do this one, right? No?
Yes, Prabhu, I think it is from there only, I think.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Soon after the festivities, Prabhupada and his disciples retired. Again, his health wavered, this time because of his sister's heavy cooking, and he felt a strain on his heart. He sent for an Ayurvedic doctor who taught Achyutananda how to do a very gentle massage to help circulation and restricted Prabhupada from sweets. As Prabhupada recovered, he began regularly lecturing in his room during the evening. As Prabhupada recovered, he began regularly lecturing in his room during the evening. Although he spoke in English for his disciples, the room would soon fill to capacity with relatives and friends. There were generally disturbances from outside due to the noises of Kali Puja. Nearby Pisima's house was a large tent, a center for evening street parties, which included a sweets counter, fireworks, and an excessively loud public address system that incongruously blared Julie Andrews singing songs from The Sound of Music. One evening, as Prabhupada spoke, my only qualification is that I have unflinching faith in my spiritual master. A large firecracker exploded right outside the door. The audience smiled tolerantly. Yes, Prabhupada said, taking the explosion as confirmation of his words. It is glorious. One night, Prabhupada explained that according to Bhagavad Gita, demigod worshippers are less intelligent. People worship Kali for material rewards, he said. But since all material things are temporary, such worship is inferior to the worship of Krishna. Kali is not able to grant the worshipper liberation from birth and death. Which is better? Achyutananda asked. The worship of the Christians and Jews, which is mostly impersonal, or the worship of the non-absolute by the worshippers of Kali? This is a very interesting question, actually, because he compared to the demigods and worshippers of Christians and Jews. Let's see what Prabhupada says. My understanding was Christianity and Jews, because they're trying to worship. Answer is here. The worship of Kali is better, Prabhupada said. Exactly, because the worshippers are in the Vedic system. They're most likely to bow down to Radha and Krishna or chant Hare Krishna than a Christian or Jew. There is a chance that they will become Krishna devotee in the future if they lose their material attachments. That's the interesting thing. Yeah, I agree with what Prabhupada said. So basically, after the feast, they took rest, looks like retirements, they took rest. And there's a Kali Puja was going on, a lot of crowd, a lot of disturbances. And Prabhupada was mentioning about his only qualification is his firm, unflinching faith in his spiritual master. So as a cracker explorer, Prabhupada say, yeah, this is the confirmation, maybe in fun way. So it is glorious. And now the question comes, Achyutananda asked, what is better? I'm sure many of you may have contemplated on this. I was thinking, because demigod worship is called less intelligent. They don't direct worship the Supreme. On the other hand, Christians and Jews, some, not all, you're trying to worship directly the Supreme Lord. But on the other hand, Christian Jews are non-followers of the Vedas. They've totally rejected the Vedas. So if you reject the Vedas, you will not attain Krishna anyway. So it's Prabhupada give an interesting answer, because even though Kali worshippers are called very less intelligent, but this is better because they've accepted the process, and as soon as they give up the material attachments, they may bow down to Radha and Krishna. But on the other hand, the process is very difficult. They may not be able to bow down, take up the process of Vedic culture. That's what I get from this. So from Prabhupada. Okay, second group.
Prabhupada regularly invited his god brothers and their disciples to join him in America. Sometimes he seemed to do it just to get them at least to think more of preaching. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had once chided that the Gaudiya Math Ashrama was no more than a joint mass of the members going out each day and collecting enough alms so that they could eat together, but with no dynamic vision for preaching. So Prabhupada's frequent invitations, you should go to America, come back with me, would stir them. Even if they couldn't actually come, on visiting the ashrama of Bhakti Sharanga Goswami, Prabhupada saw that the audience consisted almost entirely of old widows, but he spoke as usual. One day, Prabhupada's god brother, Haridas Swami, came by. He was heavy-set and loud, and he spoke very rapidly. Very happy to see you coming here from America. This is wonderful. Krishna is the Samam Bonam, the cause of all causes. I want you to come to my temple. When Haridas Maharaj went into a separate room, Prabhupada turned to Achyutananda. He wants us to go to his temple. But to go there, I will have to go onto a rickshaw and then onto a tram car and then onto a train and then another rickshaw. Aware of Prabhupada's weak condition, Achyutananda began shaking his head negatively. When Haridas Maharaj returned, Achyutananda said that Swamiji couldn't come to his mata. Who are you? Haridas Maharaj said angrily. You are just a brahmachari. You should risk your life. Achyutananda replied, I will risk my life, but I can't risk my spiritual master's life. Haridas Maharaj felt insulted. Don't worry, Prabhupada said. He is just very talkative. Prabhupada paid a visit to B.K. Keshava Maharaj, the god brother who had awarded him the sannyas order in 1959. Prabhupada sat on the floor and spoke in Bengali to his god brother, who was very old and apparently on his deathbed. Prabhupada had Achyutananda sing for Keshava Maharaj. Keshava Maharaj requested Prabhupada to visit his ashram, Devanand Mutt in Navadvip. So here, like Prabhupada's god brothers are coming to see him, and Prabhupada used to ask his god brothers to or the disciples to join him in America. Like he used to do it sometimes to just to to encourage them to do more preaching, because Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur once like he got angry that people are just going in, collecting alms and coming out, coming back, but they're not having a vision for preaching. So like Prabhupada would invite them at least so that it would encourage them to actually, even though they can't come to America, to preach. And when he visited the ashram of Bhakti Saranga Goswami, he saw that the audience was entirely of widows. And then one day, Haridas Swami, who is also another god brother, came to visit Prabhupada, and he wanted Prabhupada to come to his temple, but Prabhupada said that if you have to go to his temple, it is a little bit long journey. He has to take a rickshaw, go onto a tram car, and then a train, and then another rickshaw. And Achyutananda, knowing Prabhupada's condition, he said he was shaking his head, and he told Haridas Maharaj when he came back into the room that Prabhupada won't come. And Haridas Maharaj got angry. You are a brahmachari, you should risk your life. And to that, Achyutananda replied that I can risk my life, but I won't risk my spiritual master's life. And Haridas Maharaj got insulted and left. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, he's just talkative. And Prabhupada also visited his Kesava Maharaj. He got his sannyas order from Kesava Maharaj. And he was also very old. He was on his deathbed, and Kesava Maharaj asked Prabhupada to visit his ashram in Navadvip.
So many things will happen, it just comes up from America scene, now India scene with the God brothers and all these things. It's a long story will continue. Yeah, AJ?
Srila Prabhupada had wanted to return to, excuse me, goodness. Srila Prabhupada had wanted to return to the U.S. as a permanent resident, but his students in America hadn't been able to get the necessary clearance from the U.S. Immigration Department. The devotees in Boston had gotten in touch with a few Harvard Indology professors, but had obtained no signed statements about Prabhupada's importance. All the ISKCON centers had written formal letters inviting A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and had been presented copies to the U.S. Immigration Office. But unless the devotees could produce something more impressive, like a government recommendation or a university's offer for him to join their faculty, Prabhupada could not become a U.S. resident. On October 13th, Prabhupada wrote to his disciples in Montreal, I am very anxious to go to Montreal. Therefore, you must try your best to get my immigration visa on the basis of my being an authorized Vaishnava minister, based on Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Rather than wait indefinitely for permanent residency, Prabhupada decided to apply for a visitor's visa. He went with the Chutananda to the U.S. consulate on Harrington Road. There in the middle of Calcutta, they entered a small piece of America with everything shiny, new, and efficient. Air conditioners, stainless steel, water coolers, electric security doors, U.S. Marines, and American flags. Sitting before the secretary of the consulate, Prabhupada looked small and humble. I want a visa to see my students in America, he said softly. Do you have any letters? The secretary asked. Achutananda handed over the letters from the temples. The secretary reviewed them and quickly gave Prabhupada a 4-month visa. While leaving the building, Prabhupada remarked, I will just get anything and then it can be extended. On October 19th, Prabhupada wrote Hayagriva regarding his imminent return. I am already preparing for returning to USA, and I have obtained a visitor's visa the day before yesterday. Most probably, I shall take the first chance to return to USA upon my return from Navadvipa. And on October 22nd, he wrote Umapati, you will be glad to know that I have already secured a visitor's visa to your country and have asked my travel agent to book my seat on the earliest possible date. I think I shall be in your midst by the middle of November. So he wasn't having any luck getting his permanent residency, and the devotees in America were reaching out all over the place. We're talking to people at Harvard and other universities, and trying to get kind of some credentials for him, some sort of signed statements that showed his importance, or a government recommendation or even a job letter. But because of their inability, a job offer, but because of that, they it probably wasn't likely that he'd become a U.S. resident. So that, and he was trying to get to Montreal as well. And he said, "Look, I'm a Vaishnava minister. According to Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, so that should help me get my immigration visa there." And then instead of waiting, he decided, I'm just going to get a visitor's visa, and that we can just keep extending it as much as we can. So we went to the U.S. consulate and handed over the letters from all the ISKCON centers, from all the devotees, and he got a 4-month visa there. And at that point, he let Hayagriva know, hey, I'm going to come back to the U.S. as soon as possible. I already got my visa. And then same with, he wrote Umapati and said, I should be back in America by the middle of November.
On October 24, Prabhupada traveled with Achyutananda and Ramanuja to Navadvip. Although the local train took 4 hours, the lush Bengal countryside gradually revealed its heavenly beauty, and Prabhupada's health seemed to improve just from the pleasant journey. By the time they arrived at Navadvip, Achyutananda and Ramanuja were also feeling relief from the rigors of Calcutta. For the first time in weeks, they could open their eyes without blinking through drops of perspiration. A large kirtan party of brahmacharis, mostly members of Kesav Maharaj, Devananda Gaudiya Math, met Srila Prabhupada at the Navadvip train station. The brahmacharis were meticulously neat, with their robes all dyed the same shade of saffron, their Vaishnava tilak markings bold and distinct, their heads smoothly shaved, their sikhas precise. They offered Prabhupada and his party aromatic garlands made from flowers resembling lotuses and gathered around Srila Prabhupada with worshipful enthusiasm. Also present were a few of Sridhar Maharaj's disciples, waiting with rickshaws to take Prabhupada and his disciples to their guru's ashrama. Although between the two groups there was an unspoken competition for Prabhupada's presence, he had previously agreed to go to Sridhar Maharaj's place. He promised the members of Devananda Math that he would visit them next. Soon after leaving the station, the rickshaws turned onto a road lined with lush tropical vegetation, banana trees, tall bamboos, exotic blooming flowers. Prabhupada saw simple villagers working near their straw and mud huts, and in the distance, the spire of Sridhar Maharaj temple. A kirtan party greeted Prabhupada at the outer gate of Sridhar Maharaj ashram. Chanting Hare Krishna and playing kartals and clay mridans, Prabhupada entered the temple offered obeisances before the deities of Radha and Krishna, and then went to see his god brother.
So now he says that Prabhupada with his two disciples meet. Achyutananda and Ramanuja to Navadip, and they are finding the beauty of while traveling, lush greenery and everything, real good. Actually, Bengal is very greenery, and now also how greenery it would have been that time. So they find it is things are improving their health just by this trouble, pleasant journey. And they were received by Kesar Maharaj's Gaudiya Math, Devanand Gaudiya Math, with Kirtan and Brahmacharis. These devotees are seeing, American devotees are seeing the other Vaishnavas. They're learning by seeing itself, they're learning. I think by going, they learn many ways how to respect a guru, how to respect a sadhu, how the brahmacharis. They all are not just experiencing, they're learning also from all these things, good and bad. Here, it says Sridhar Maharaj's disciples waiting with rickshaws to take Prabhupada to his disciples to their Guru's ashram. Sridhar Maharaj is also, you'll remember, he's a very good friend. They all together served in Bombay office, remember? So he helps Sridhar Maharaj acquire, Prabhupada helps Sridhar Maharaj to acquire the Bombay center and all this in their long-term relationship. So here they came and they see banana, tropical vegetation, banana trees, bamboos, exotic flowers, everything they see, mud huts, straw and mud huts. Those days, very simple. So, yeah, so he has been received by Sridhar Maharaj there. Who is next? Gaurang, did you read it?
Sridhar Maharaj is very old, his sight failing, his joints stiff with arthritis. He stayed mostly in his room or sometimes on his veranda, moved only with slow rickety motions. He was an austere and kindly Vaishnava, and smiled heartily on seeing Prabhupada and his disciples. In fluent English, he began praising Prabhupada's preaching in America, repeatedly using Prabhupada's phrase Krishna consciousness. Swamiji's work, he said, was the fulfillment of Lord Chaitanya's prophecy that Krishna consciousness would one day spread all over the three worlds. He laughed and smiled and praised
all of the world.
All over the world. He laughed and smiled and praised the Krishna consciousness movement with no trace of jealousy. So you appreciate this phrase, Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada smiled. Yes, Sridhar Maharaj replied, and the disciples of Swami Maharaj also. They turned towards Achyutananda and Ramanuja. With very little effort, your preaching will go far. The boys were astonished. This was really something to write home about. Sitting on the roof of a temple in this jungle paradise with old Sridhar Maharaj, appreciating Swamiji's work as the greatest work on behalf of Lord Chaitanya, and Swamiji sitting relaxed, grinning, and making humble replies. It was high point of the trip. My dear Satsarup, please accept my blessings. I have already duly received the invitation from Harvard University. It is understood that they are scheduling me for November 20th between 6 and 10 p.m. I can start immediately on the strength of my visitor's visa, but I am waiting for Mukunda's reply for his trying for my permanent visa. Yesterday we have all come to Navadip. This place is another establishment of one of my godbrothers. It is very nice and extensive place, and my godbrother, B.R. Sridhar Maharaj, has spared one entire nice house for a stay. He has also agreed to cooperate with our society. We shall observe his birthday ceremony tomorrow, and the brahmacharis shall learn how to celebrate the spiritual master's birthday. Vyas Puja Day, the observance of B.R. Sridhar Maharaj's birthday was October 27th. His disciples had erected a pandal on the temple road, and about 100 people attended. Sridhar Maharaj sat on his Vyasa-asan, and Prabhupada and the other sannyasis, all wearing flower garlands, sat in chairs next to Sridhar Maharaj. Prabhupada spoke in Bengali. Some of Sridhar Maharaj's disciples, inspired by Prabhupada's preaching about the glories of spreading Krishna consciousness in the West, delivered speeches in English as Vyas puja homages to their spiritual master. Sridhar Maharaj also speaking in English, gave a very scientific lecture on Krishna consciousness and the senses. Afterwards, Prabhupada told his disciples he has very high realizations, but he's keeping them to himself. So the disciples of Prabhupada met Sridhar Maharaj, and they described Sridhar Maharaj as very old, and his eyesight was not very good, and his joints were stiff with arthritis. Even though he was old, he was still very austere and very kind Vaishnava, and he was the one godbrother of Srila Prabhupada who was not jealous of what Prabhupada was doing, but was actually praising Prabhupada by using Prabhupada's phrase, Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada asked, saying that, so you appreciate this phrase? And Sridhar Maharaj just says, yes, and he also appreciates the disciples of Prabhupada. And he tells the disciples, saying with very little effort, their preaching will go far. And the boys were astonished because of this humble type of conversation between Prabhupada and Sridhar Maharaj. And as they talked about the work on behalf of Lord Chaitanya, they're saying that this was the high point of the trip. Then Prabhupada is sending a letter to Satsuru, saying that he has received an invitation from Harvard University, and he can start to leave for US depending on the visitor's visa. But he's still waiting for Mukunda's reply for his permanent visa in the US. And he tells Satsuru, saying that yesterday they had come to Navadvip to an establishment of B.R. Sridhar Maharaj. And that tomorrow is his birthday, and that the brahmacharis will learn how to celebrate the Vyaspurja day of a spiritual master's birthday. And so the next day, his disciples had erected a pandal on the temple road, and about 100 people attended. And Sridhar Maharaj sat on his Vyasasan, and all the other sannyasis Prabhupada were sitting next to him in chairs with flower garlands. And then Prabhupada spoke in Bengali, and many of Sridhar Maharaj's disciples were very inspired by and liked how Prabhupada was saying, preaching in the West of Krishna consciousness. And then they delivered their homages to their spiritual master. And then Prabhupada explained, saying to the disciples, saying that he has very high realizations, but he's being humble and he's keeping them all to himself.
That's wonderful. I went to Sridhar Maharaj. We went to one center in California. Later, Maharaj also have one center, a few centers in America actually. Okay, Nipa, can you please read?
Hare Krishna. Every morning before dawn, Sridhara Maharaj sent out a party of brahmacharis to perform kirtana in the villages. On Prabhupada's request, Achyutananda and Ramanuj joined them, leaving before sunrise and returning at dusk. Although Prabhupada and Sridhara Maharaj usually remained at the temple, one day they got into a rickshaw and accompanied the chanting party through the streets of Navdeepa. The festival of the Devanand Math was a big affair. In contrast to Bhakti Saranga Goswami's ashram in Calcutta,
That is Devanand Mutt.
Devanand Math was a big affair. In contrast to Bhakti Saranga Goswami's ashrama in Calcutta, where only widows had attended, B.P. Keshava Maharaja's Devananda Mutt had about 200 brahmacharis and 20 sannyasis. Some of the brahmacharis, however, were not full-time but were attending school outside. So the ashrama's atmosphere was little like that of a social club. But when the kirtana and the circumambulation of the temple began, 700 people took part. The impeccably dressed sannyasis whose every piece of saffron cloth, including their cloth-wrapped dandas, were dyed exactly the same shade, danced back and forth before the deities. A dozen sannyasis danced in a group. Their dandas moved together, dipping and rising forward and back to the delight of the brahmacharis. Prabhupada sat on a dais with other dignitaries and spoke to the festival audience. Achyutananda, on Prabhupada's request, spoke a few words in Bengali, bringing laughs and applause. Sridhara Maharaj spoke gravely in Bengali. A sannyasi from the Devananda Mutt, speaking for their absent leader, B.K. Keshava Maharaj, proclaimed in impassioned tones that although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement had been predicted to spread throughout the world, no one had known how it could be possible. Now, thanks to the work of Bhakti Vedanta Swami, it was happening. After a large feast in the evening, Prabhupada's party returned to Sridhara Maharaja's ashram. Sridhara Maharaj intimated to Prabhupada that Devananda Mutt emphasized quantity, whereas his own ashram emphasized quality. Curious as to what this meant, Achyutananda wanted to ask Prabhupada, but the time didn't seem appropriate. So here it says, in the morning, every morning, Sridhara Maharaj used to send out a group of brahmacharis to perform kirtana in the villages. On Prabhupada's request, Achyutananda and Ramanjana also joined. They used to leave before sunrise and return at dusk. Although Prabhupada and Sridhara Maharaj usually remained in the temple, one time they got into the rickshaw and accompanied the chanting group through the streets of Navadvipa. The festival at the Devananda Mutt was like a big affair. In contrast, Bhakti Saranga Goswami's ashrama in Calcutta, where only widows attended, B.P. Keshava's Maharaja's Devananda Mutt had 200 brahmacharis and 20 sannyasis. And some of the brahmacharis, however, not full time, but were attending the school outside. So ashrama's atmosphere was like a social club. But when the kirtana used to start, the circumambulation of the temple used to begin, and 700 people used to take part. They used to the sannyasis dressed with the saffron cloth, including their cloth wrapped dandas, was dyed exactly the same shade. A dozen of sannyasis used to dance in the group, moving their dandas back and forth. And Prabhupada used to sit on the dais with other dignitaries and spoke to the festival audience. Achyutananda also spoke in Bengali and brought some laughs. Sridhara Maharaj spoke fluently in the Bengali, and a sannyasi from Devananda Mutt, speaking in the absence of B.K. Maharaja, proclaimed his impassioned tones. Although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement had been predicted throughout the world, no one had known it was possible. So now things of Bhakti Vedanta was happening. And after a large feast in the evening, Prabhupada's party returned to Sridhara Maharaja's ashrama. Sridhara Maharaj intimated to Prabhupada that Devananda Mutt was like his own ashrama and emphasized more on quality. And curiosity was there by Achyutananda to ask what it meant, but the time was not appropriate to ask about it.
Prasanthi?
After 9 days in Navadvipa, Prabhupada was ready to return to Calcutta and prepare for his trip back to United States. He and his 2 disciples took rickshaws and Navadvipa and caught a morning train to Calcutta. On the train, Achyutananda timidly put forward the question that had been on his mind. Swamiji, what did you and Sridhar Maharaja discuss? Oh, many things, Prabhupada replied. But if I were to tell you now, you would faint. After a silence, Prabhupada added, still, I offered him to be president of our society. I knew he would not accept. He is keeping things within him. Anyway, this is all beyond you. Do not have any ill feelings towards any of my god brothers. They are all great souls. There are just some differences on preaching and spreading. Even in your mind, do not feel any ill will towards them. At the same time, do not mix very thickly with them. Achyutananda suggested, maybe if these 2 sannyasis had each others' qualities combined. Ah, yes, Prabhupada said, now you have understood me. Srila Prabhupada's intention in coming to Calcutta was simply to prepare to leave for America. He had his visitor's visa already, but he thought that he stayed in India a little longer. In San Francisco, Mukunda might be able to secure permanent American residency for him. He went to his sister's house to spend his last days in Calcutta there. But after only a few days, he felt that the Radha Govinda deity, the deity he had worshipped in his childhood, was calling him. When Prabhupada had been no more than an infant, his servant used to take him and his cousin Subuddhi Mullik on a perambulator, wheel them into the temple courtyard, and take them before the altar of Radha Govinda. And as soon as Prabhupada could walk, his father would hold his hand and take him before the deity every day. Sometimes Prabhupada would go alone and stand for hours gazing upon Radha and Krishna, who appeared very beautiful to him with their slanted eyes and fine dress and ornaments. It had been for the pleasure of Radha Govinda that as a child, beginning at the age of 5, he had performed his miniature Ratha Yatra festival. After after being in Navadvipa for 9 days, Prabhupada and his disciples finally returned to Calcutta, and he was preparing to return to United States. During the journey, Achyutananda put forward a question saying, what did you and Sridhar Maharaja discuss? So Prabhupada initially did not completely discuss, and then after a while of Krishna conscious society, but and though he is not going to accept, he offered it, and Sridhar Maharaja did not approve of it. He said he is keeping things within him, and he also suggested Achyutananda not to have any ill feelings for his god brothers, and there are some differences between them regarding the preaching and how to spread Krishna consciousness, but um, he should not have any ill feelings, and should not mix time. And Achyutananda suggested maybe if the qualities of both the sannyasis are combined, that would have been nice. And then Prabhupada said, yes, that is true. Um, and then Prabhupada came back to Calcutta, and he already have his visa ready, but he still wanted to wait some more time for his American residency. And then he felt like his childhood deity, Radha Govinda deity, is calling him. As an infant, his servant used to take him to that deity, and after he could walk, his father used to take him to that temple. So he used to go every day, and sometimes gaze for hours. And then those were all his childhood memories. And he also, at the age of 5, he performed a small Rath Yatra festival also.
Thank you so much. Okay, Ranath, you can.
Hare Krishna. Just 2 weeks ago, when Prabhupada had been staying at his sister's house, his health had prevented him from going to North Calcutta to see the deity. So he had gone to Navadvip without taking their blessings. But now, although still weak and although preoccupied with traveling to the US, he felt that the deity was calling him. For the past 150 years, Radha Govinda temple had been maintained by the aristocratic Maliks, a branch of Prabhupada's own family. The Maliks had owned the entire block on Harrison Road, now Mahatma Gandhi Road, and rents from the block long building opposite the temple had financed the opulent worship of Radha Govinda. In those days, the deities had been worshipped on a gorgeous altar in the large Kirtana hall, and they had been dressed in silks and ornamented with gilded and bejeweled crowns and necklaces. All the pious Vaishnava families of the neighborhood would visit, and on Janmashtami, Krishna's birthday, even British gentlemen and ladies would come. But today, the Malik family possessed only remnants of the European art and furnishings that had once filled their homes and temple, relics from an age of former grandeur. And the worship of Radha Govinda had pitifully deteriorated. Srila Prabhupada was pained to see the neglect. No longer were Radha and Govinda the center of the Malik's lives. The deity worship still continued, conducted by paid brahmanas, but few people came to see. The main attraction now was the golden deity of the goddess Kali on the large altar in the Kirtan hall. Radha and Govinda in the family for many generations had been relegated to a small upstairs room in the Malik compound. Their dress was no longer elegant, their valuable crowns and ornaments had disappeared, and there were no large kirtans as before. Only a paid brahmana came in the morning to rub sandalwood pulp on their shining bodies, dress them carefully in whatever simple clothes remained, and place jasmine garlands around their necks, while a widow or two watched the silent proceedings. Krishna consciousness was dying in India, dying from neglect. At least it was dying here in Calcutta. And in many other places in India, even in Vrindavan, the impersonal philosophy prevailed, and grand old temples had become residences for pigeons, monkeys, and dogs. Sad as it was, it only reinforced Prabhupada's conviction of the need to return to the fertile ground in the West. Although here in India the spirit of devotion was dying, in the West it was just beginning to grow. In New York, San Francisco, Montreal, Boston. So Prabhupada was getting ready to come back to the US, and he didn't find time to go visit the Radha Govind temple that he used to so often visit when he was a child. But um, um, but although he couldn't, but he was thinking about them, and he felt as if the deities were calling him. And Prabhupada gives a bit history that for the past 150 years his cousin's family or his extended family, the Maliks, had been maintaining the Radha Govind temple, and because they owned that entire block on Harrison Road, they were able to maintain the temple and the opulent worship of Radha Govind. And so Prabhupada is describing how beautiful the deities were, how gorgeously they were decorated with ornaments. And even the British gentlemen and ladies would come, especially on Janmashtami day. But unfortunately, at that time, things had deteriorated. There was no more grandeur. The deity worship was going down. We just had a paid brahmana who was performing some minimal services, and instead of Radha Govind deities in that Kirtan hall, there was goddess Kali's deity installed there. and in general, the overall DT dressing, DT decoration, everything was deteriorating, and it was very saddening for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada then goes on to say that Krishna consciousness was dying, especially in Calcutta and also in other places like Vrindavan, and more impersonal philosophy was prevailing, and these old temples and all the great residences were just being now occupied by pigeons, monkeys, and dogs, and only reinforced, you know, Prabhupada's commitment to come back to the West, which was fertile, or where, you know, the spiritual Krishna consciousness was just budding, and Prabhupada also says that, you know, the spirit of devotion in India was dying.
Thank you. So Krishna, Prabhupada's movement actually revitalizing, re-spiritualizing the society. East, west, and everywhere in the temple, bad condition. In South India, at least the temple there maintains well. I think so far also, but now they are good. They used to be very good in the past, if you compare, looks like. But especially in northern side, is very bad shape. No much devotion. Just maintaining like this. Okay. Sridhari.
If pure Krishna consciousness were dying in India, then why shouldn't it be transplanted in the fertile West? There it would flourish. It would spread worldwide and even back to India again. When India, bent on following the West, saw the material advanced Americans taking to Krishna consciousness, she would reevaluate her own culture. Prabhupada saw a Krishna conscious revolution beginning in the United States. He didn't consider himself its creator. He was the servant of Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya's desire was that every Indian help to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. Unfortunately, the very verses in the scriptures that prophesied a worldwide Krishna conscious movement were a puzzle even to most of Srila Prabhupada's god brothers. They admitted it. But soon they would see there was a great potential in the West. Prabhupada had shown many of his god brothers the newspaper articles, Swami's flock chanting in Tompkins Square Park, ancient trance dance at Stanford University, and he had brought some disciples with him. These are only beginnings, much more had to be done. And who would help? BP Keshav Maharaj was dying. Sridhar Maharaj could not come out. Who else? Most Indians were impersonalist, non-devotional yogis or demigod worshippers. As Srila Prabhupada stood before the Radha Govinda deity, explaining to Achyutananda and Ramanuja how he had worshipped them in his childhood and how they had been his first inspiration in Krishna consciousness, he understood deeply that he must take Krishna consciousness all over the world, even if single-handedly. Of course, he was not alone. He had disciples, and they were opening new centers even in his absence. He would have to return to them very soon and supervise his growing movement. The Maliks regarded Prabhupada more as a relative than a spiritual leader. To them, he was a hometown cousin who had done something successful in America. Narendranath Malik, a childhood friend of Prabhupada's, called Prabhupada Dada, brother, and regularly joked with him. The Maliks were glad to give Prabhupada and his two followers a large room in the temple compound for as long as they wanted to stay in Calcutta. Prabhupada set up his usual arrangements, a mat on the floor, a low table for a desk, and beside the desk his few possessions. Here he could study and write, receive guests, or rest. Daily, some local women brought Prabhupada and his disciples simple prasadam in a tiffin. So here we see how the seed of pure Krishna consciousness was dying in India. And then so Srila Prabhupada thought, why not transplant it somewhere else where he saw the potential, especially in the West, where it could flourish. So if Krishna consciousness spreads again in the West, then again it will spread eventually to all over the world. because in India people were like hell bent on following the American culture, taking material advance. I mean, wanted to take material advancement. So if Krishna conscious, if they see Americans following Krishna consciousness, then even India, it will also start spreading in India as well. And then again, Srila Prabhupada saw that how Krishna consciousness revolution was just beginning in United States. He did not consider himself to be the creator. He did not take any credit. He was just a servant of Krishna consciousness. And then again, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire was that eventually every Indians should help Krishna consciousness to be spread worldwide. So there were many verses in scriptures that prophesied the worldwide Krishna conscious movement that even puzzled Srila Prabhupada's god brothers. And then, but again, Srila Prabhupada proved that. Then he showed how much potential was there in the West. He showed to his god brothers all the newspaper articles about his preaching there. Like Swami spoke chanting in Tompkins Square Park, and about the event they had at the Stanford University, the ancient trance dance. And also he brought with him two of his American disciples. So this is just the beginning, and there was much more to be done. But again, Prabhupada was thinking who would help spread the movement worldwide. Like was one of his senior god brother, BP Keshav Maharaj, he was like almost dying. And then Sridhar Maharaj could not come out. Who else? And then there were other Indians who were impersonalists, and then demigod worshippers and non-devotional yogis. So Srila Prabhupada stood before his childhood deities, Radha Govinda, and he was explaining to Achyutananda and Ramanuja, his two American followers, how he worshipped them in his childhood. And then he was like contemplating like deeply that he must take Krishna consciousness all over the world, even if it is single-handedly. Again, of course, he felt he was not alone. He had all his disciples, and then already all his disciples were opening new centers even in his absence. So he would just have to return back to America and then just supervise his growing movement. So the Maliks, they regarded Srila Prabhupada more as a relative than as a spiritual leader. To them, he was like just a hometown cousin who had achieved some success in America. So Narendranath Malik, he was a childhood friend of Prabhupada. He would call Srila Prabhupada Dada, and it means brother. And then sometimes he would regularly joke with Srila Prabhupada. That was like the intimacy there. So Maliks, they gave Srila Prabhupada and these two American followers a very large room in the temple compound, and then they were allowed to stay there as long as they wanted. So Prabhupada set up his usual arrangements, a small mat on the floor and a small table and then some of his few possessions. And then there he could study, write, receive guests or rest. So some local woman every day would bring Srila Prabhupada and his disciples some simple prasadam in a tiffin box.
Thank you. Anyone remembers how Prabhupada didn't meet his family? Or they are in Calcutta? They moved? He met already? PC man. Now, how about his wife and daughter? Yeah. Okay. Vijayan and Prabhu, please read.
The Kali Puja celebrations drew large crowds into the main hall before the Kali deity, and Prabhupada gave regular lectures there from Srimad Bhagavatam. He also spoke in the homes of various Mullik families. The hosts, members of the dwelling Bengali aristocracy, would offer Prabhupada and his disciples Radha Govinda Prasadam, cut fruits, water chestnuts, minced ginger, and soaked salted mung beans. Most of those who came to visit Prabhupada in his room were not really interested in spiritual life, but they wanted his blessings. There was a local Brahmana whose occupation was to go from shop to shop carrying a few flowers, a cup of water, and a brass container with sandalwood paste and kumkuma powder. Using this paraphernalia, he would offer a blessing to the shopkeepers every day and receive a few paisa in payment. Knowing Prabhupada to be a Vaishnava, the Brahmana came to see him to receive a spiritual benediction. The man's forehead was decorated with both Vaishnava Tilaka, the two vertical lines, and Saivata Tilaka, three horizontal lines. After the man left, Achyutananda asked Swamiji, who was that? He is a hired Brahmana, Prabhupada said. When he goes to the Vaishnavas, he gives him the blessings, and when he goes to the Saivites, he gets money. He has to make a living. Another man came asserting that he wanted to teach Prabhupada's disciple Hindi. He asked Prabhupada to help him get to America, but Prabhupada told him, "You must take sannyasa, then I will bring you to America." After 2 visits, the man stopped coming. A Mulik relation, a small, bald, bright-eyed man, came by one day carrying a book entitled Interesting Studies. He posted philosophical questions, simple queries about karma, jnana, and bhakti, but then would interpret Prabhupada and answer them himself. Finally, when the man asked one of his questions, Prabhupada replied, "So what is your answer?" The man gave a general answer, but later when Prabhupada began explaining that Lord Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, is the supreme person of God, the man interrupted, "You may call God Krishna, call him Shiva, call him." Little bit of yeah. So, there was a Kali Puja celebration over there where large crowds of people assembled over there before the Kali deity. And Prabhupada gave lectures from Srimad Bhagavatam. And also he spoke to the different houses of Mulik families and those who were like the members of the Bengali aristocracy family. They would offer Prabhupada and his disciples Radha Govinda Prasadam, fruits, water chestnuts, and the mung beans. And most of those who came to Prabhupada to visit him were not interested in spiritual life, but they wanted his blessings. And there was a local Brahmana whose occupation was to go from shop to shop carrying flowers, a cup of water, and in a brass container with a sandalwood paste and kumkum powder. And he would offer blessing to shopkeepers every day and receive a paisa in payment. And after he knew that Prabhupada was a Vaishnava, he came to meet Prabhupada and to see him and get spiritual benediction. And the man's forehead was decorated with both Vaishnava and Vaishnava Tilaka and Saivata Tilaka. And after the man left, Sachidananda asked Swamiji who was that, and Prabhupada mentioned that he was a hired Brahmana, and when he visits Vaishnava, he gets the blessings, and he visits the Saivatis, he gets the money, so that he makes his living. And another man came who was interested in teaching Hindi to Prabhupada's disciples, and the reason being he wanted to visit America. But Prabhupada mentioned that if he would come to he should take sannyasi, then Prabhupada would take him to America. After 2 visits, the person stopped coming. And there was another.
That was a joke. Yeah. If this is a joke, right? He wants to come to America. Okay, you take sannyas. Prabhupada knew how to control him. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, and another Maulik relation, like a bright-eyed bald man, he carried a book entitled Interesting Studies, and he was raising philosophical question about karma, jnana, and bhakti, and he would not let Prabhupada to answer, and he would answer by himself. And he was continuing this, and once the man asked some question, and Prabhupada, without answering, he asked him what is the answer, and that person gave a general answer, and Prabhupada started explaining Lord Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, as the supreme person of Godhead. And the man interrupted that you may call him a God Krishna or call him Shiva, call him.
Brothers, please, this is a conversation, you can continue.
Yes, Guruji. No demigods. The man who became a little nervous and quoted a popular Bengali impersonalist who taught that all gods and all men are the same. He is an upstart, Prabhupada said. That is not the teaching of the Gita. What is other teaching? It is all utter confusion. If you go on speaking like this, the man said angrily, I will have to leave this place. Please don't criticize this Paramhamsa. Why not? Prabhupada said. He is a concoctor. The man got up and left. calling out, "You don't know Krishna," as he left the room. Prabhupada turned to Achyutananda and Ramanuja and smiled. Every time you introduce Krishna, they say, "Why only Krishna?" But that is what Krishna says. Mataha partaram nanyat. There is no truth superior to me. These rascal impersonalists have ruined Bengal. One day, a man gave Prabhupada a 200 rupee donation, and Prabhupada immediately asked the pujari for an old set of Radha Govinda's clothes, gave the clothes to some of the temple ladies along with the 200 rupees, and asked that the ladies make gold embroidered dress for Radha Govinda. Radha Govinda are taking care of us, he said, so we can take care of them also. Ramanuja's beard was huge, looking like an ordinary hippie. He misrepresented Srila Prabhupada wherever they went. Prabhupada told Achyutananda, "Tell your friend to shave." Achyutananda and Ramanuja talked, but Ramanuja wouldn't shave. Wanting Ramanuja to agree to on his own, Prabhupada didn't ask him again. But when a copy of the latest Back to Garden magazine arrived from the States, Prabhupada got an idea. Two illustrations in the magazine showed Haridas Thakur converting a prostitute. After her conversation, Prabhupada had shaved her head. After her conversation, the prostitute has shaved her head. Sorry, extremely sorry. Showing the pictures to Ramanuja, Prabhupada asked, "What is the difference between this picture and that picture?" "I don't know, Swamiji," Ramanuja replied. "No," Prabhupada said, pointing to the pictures. "What is the difference in this picture?" "Oh, she is a devotee." "Yes," Prabhupada said. "But what else?" "Oh, she has a shaved head." "Yes," Prabhupada smiled. "A devotee has a shaved head. Do you want me to shave my head?" "Yes." Ramanuja shaved, but within a few days, he began growing his beard and hair back. From now on, Prabhupada told Achyutananda, "No more cheap initiations. They have to know something." Ramanuja hung on. Prabhupada wanted Ramanuja and Achyutananda to remain in India after his departure and continue to try for the American house in Vrindavan. Ramanuja wrote his own impressions to his friend Mukunda in San Francisco. So this is a conversation where Prabhupada is talking about Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and Prabhupada is condemning he's condemning any type of concoction. He is not tolerating. So that is what is from this conversion inferred. And Prabhupada and Ramanuja is now discussing with Achyutananda and Ramanuja that Krishna has to be considered as Supreme Personality of Godhead. And every time they introduce Krishna, people ask, "Why Krishna?" So Prabhupada is quoting Matta Paratam Nanyat. That there is no true superior truth to me, that Bhagavad Gita Krishna says to Arjuna. And then Prabhupada condemns the impersonalist. Then the conversation between for donation for Radha Govinda's deities to the ladies. Uh, Prabhupada gave Lakshmi along with 200 rupees to make dress for Radha Govinda. So Prabhupada was like personal deities, Radha Govindas, yeah. So that is a very personal connection of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is it is shown that how Prabhupada is connected to his roots. And then the whole conversation about Ramanuja's beard, where Prabhupada didn't wanted to force him, and then when the new BTG arrived and the pastime of Haridas Thakur and prostitute was there, so Prabhupada showed Ramanuja that pastime, pointing out to the pictures and asked, "What's the difference?" And Ramanuja said, "Oh yes," he could see. Initially he could not see what's the difference, but then he saw that the lady is devotee and she is shaved. So Ramanuja shaves, and Prabhupada sees that after shaving, Ramanuja is growing again his beard. And Prabhupada makes a comment. Prabhupada says, No more cheap initiations. They have to know something. So Prabhupada is very strict on taking disciples. So that is what we get to learn from this session.
Very nice. Thank you. Now, we will finish one more. Maybe I can read. Please be advised. Ramanuja writes, I think, to devotees, to Mukunda actually. Please be advised that we are doing all we can do. Get him off as soon as possible. But this primitive Indian government is putting obstacles in our way. The man who could have given Swamiji clearance for his P form has just drowned. So what is just drowned? So the clearance has to be made in Bombay. This is the delay. Here in Calcutta, we are having lots of fun addressing different people. Swamiji making Achyutanand and myself give a short speech. I am becoming more and more expert in this. I think that he makes us speak in order to show the audience that we American Vaishnavas are for real. And also he wants everyone to preach Krishna consciousness. It is very difficult to take care properly of Swamiji's health here. For one thing, it is big thing to serve sweets in India, and it is impolite to decline. Also, we get all kinds of visitors. We have not been able to go to bed before 11 o'clock, and Swamiji automatically wakes at 3. In this respect, the people here are very inconsiderate, but if Achyutanand and I ask them to leave, they will ask Swamiji if they should. And Swamiji, of course, said no. That's fun. Anyway, his heartbeat is a little fast and sometimes it is alarming fast. So I suggest that you get a good heart specialist to see him. Because please arrange for this doctor, and above all, make sure that Swamiji gets plenty of rest. You need not restrict visitors too strictly, because if the company is good, if the company is good, Swamiji seems to enjoy visitors. Please do all you can to get Swamiji's beat to normal again. His chariot needs to be fixed up so that he can remain on this earth for at least another 10 years. Looks like it's almost an approximate guess. Ramanuja writes to Mukunda about the situation here, the culture here, and things are. He said the Indian government is putting obstacles on the way. I didn't understand what the P form has just drowned. Means the what is drowned? Is it even explain what?
Like it sounds like the guy died.
Yeah.
Like he went swimming and didn't come back.
I felt like that, but I was, because there's no more further influence, I was confused what he meant drowned so easily he drowned. Hopefully. So he died. Anyway, so he's writing here, people want to spend not before 11. Prabhupada goes to bed. It's so hard. People don't go, and when we tell, they again confirm with Swamiji, should we go? Rather than listening to disciples, they say, should we go? Prabhupada say, okay, no, stay. No, it's a custom. You don't want to hurt people. So he goes to bed 11 and wakes up 3. He asked Mukunda to get a good doctor ready, heart doctor, so he can improve there. And he wants at least try, you should make him good health. He likes people meeting and good company. That's okay to have a good company. No, you need not restrict visitors too strictly, because if the company is good, Swamiji seems to enjoy visitors. So please do all you can to get Swamiji's beat to normal again. So with this, we will end here today. I thank you for everyone for joining and making this happen. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada Lilamrt ki jai. Thank you so much. We'll continue again tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Have a good night.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.